Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. First, I'd like to apologize that it's taken so long to upload a new video. But with that being said, I want to talk to you guys today about something that I've teased about speaking about before, and it's just taken a long time, and that is Velen's vision. Because I think that the general consensus would be, if you asked most people, what kind of vision does Velen have? Most people would say, oh, well, Velen has light vision, and that's something that I'm going to challenge today and talk to you a little bit about. So one thing that I want to point out about Velen is he's pretty much the only character in the entire game that has purple eyes like he does. It is completely unique, seemingly unique to him, and even Kil'jaeden in his defeat acknowledges this when he says to Velen, "I was always envious of your vision." Now, given that Kil'jaeden has fell vision, which is supposed to reveal, kind of the truth to you, supposedly, it's interesting that Kil'jaeden would say that. But regardless, it made me wonder, what kind of vision does Velen actually have? Like, why is he so special, and what is it? Well, I came to the World of Warcraft site, and on the WoW site, they have a bunch of short stories, which are just these short little canon stories, usually, 1 to 6 pages long. And there's one on here called Velen, Prophet's Lesson. And this is essentially, after the Cataclysm happened, Anduin journeys to the Exodar to seek out his mentor, Velen. And Anduin essentially confronts Velen about, how come you didn't warn us about the Cataclysm? If you have such vision and foresight, how come you didn't say anything? And it's interesting because by reading this, I came to understand that Velen had like 6 different ways that he could see the Cataclysm happening, and this is how it describes it. As the Prophet of the Draenei meditated, his legs crossed beneath him, his hands resting on his ancient knees. The crystals that reflected his energies glowed and pulsed and swirled around him, not in patterns, but in chaos. In the visions, the endless possibilities of tomorrow assaulted him. A weary, bedraggled gnome pulled a strange contraption through the dusts of Outland, leaving twin ruts that snaked endlessly in the dunes behind her. Ethereals, their energies wrapped in cloth, simply watched her struggle, neither helping nor impeding the gnome's hard-fought progress. Vindicator Marad battled an unseen foe with his gargantuan crystalline hammer, and then fell to his knees. A lance of blackest darkness thrust through his chest, oily, diseased smoke trailing the weapon's edge. The sky-filling, armored form of Deathwing flew across a burned world and landed on a charred, broken tree so vast it could only be Nordrassil, while supplicants draped in dark purple robes lined up and threw themselves into a volcanic crack in the earth. Maddening, the guardian of Tirisfal, wept, the tears out of place on his orc-tinged features, his eyes so vulnerable and hurt that the sight of them would have broken the heart of any other. But not Velen. The Prophet had long ago learned detachment from his visions lest they drive him mad. The third eye of prophecy had been with him so long that having premonitions was like breathing. The Atamal crystal shards had transformed him into a sentinel of alternate universes without end, sometimes down to their very eclipses in darkness, or ice, or fire. Velen didn't sorrow for these futures or mourn their extinctions or shout in exultation at their triumphs. He merely read them, watched their woven tapestries, looking for the roads that led to ultimate triumph, where life in the light battled back the dark and saved everything from annihilation. What mattered the minor events prized by most mortals, even his own Draenei, measured against the awesome responsibility of ensuring the survival of creation. Velen searched among the debris of the rapidly moving images, trying to seize onto something, find a marker for the path, but it eluded him. So what this is showing you is Velen actually has super chaotic vision. It's incredibly chaotic, in such so that it could even drive him mad. And that's a little bit interesting, because when you think of Velen, you think about the light. But the thing that it mentions right there at the end is he's searching for something to show him the way. Well, there is a way that Velen can see the path that he wants to follow. And that is actually by reaching out to the light and going where the light guides him. You see, Velen's vision is not inherently of the light. It is incredibly chaotic, showing all different types of possibilities in the future. But when you think of what kind of vision that is, there's only really 2 options, and one that foremostly comes to mind, and that is void vision. Isn't void supposed to show you all endless possibilities, and the light comes together with void to show you the truth? It's like the light is altruistic. It believes in one finite and final destination, and it doesn't really know how it's going to get there. Similar to how Illyria and Turalyon, they go to Argus, and Zira knows that they won't die, but she doesn't know how they will live. Well, the reason for that is because Illyria uses the void to keep them alive. See, it's the void that fills in the cracks where the light isn't, if that makes sense. And so that is why Locust Walker tells Illyria that the light and the void are both wrong in what they show you, because neither of them are completely responsible for destiny. See, there are those that follow the light and believe that they are following the truth. There are those that follow the void and believe that they're following the truth, but without a combination of both forces, you will be walking a blind path, whether in darkness, unable to see, or in light, blinded from the truth. See, but the thing about this is that Velen can use other people as conduits to the light, even Anduin. So Anduin comes to confront Velen, and he says, "Why didn't you warn the world about the cataclysm?" Anduin blurted out, "The turned back didn't shift position. There was neither a twitch nor a slouch to betray the thoughts of Velen, but something hung in the quiet following the question. Something heavy. I watch for the path, for the light to illuminate our way past the Legion and its destructive mission. I alone can see the path. I alone can reveal it to the forces of the light." Anduin reflected on what he'd just heard. It seems a terrible burden. The prophet spun slowly in the air to face the prince. That is why I travel the paths of tomorrow. The Legion and the old gods burn holes in the fabric of the future, and if I can see them, can prepare the mortal races, we may yet avert disaster. What if you fail? Velen's ageless serenity cracked for a moment, replaced for a fleeting instant with pain and sorrow, in overwhelming measure, made all the more frightening by the calm before and after. Let me show you something, the ancient Draenei whispered. He unfolded himself and drifted closer to the ground, still floating a few inches above the metal flooring of the Exodar. The prophet closed the distance and placed his hand on the prince's brow. I am sorry, but it is necessary, the prophet said. The Exodar fell away, and there were only vast stretches of darkness punctuated by lights and mystic energies. Then, a sudden rush, and Anduin stood on strange ground under an unfamiliar sky. There were 4 prominent moons competing for his attention, an amber atmosphere, and rock formations made from the blue-tinted ground twisted in 1,000 different ways. Anduin couldn't see any water, but the colored rock gave the impression of warring waves, suddenly frozen at the whim of some godlike artist. There were creatures scattered over the terrain and swirling through the sky, so varied and other that they defied description. Colors and different means of locomotion and patterns formed from dance or play or war. Little of it made any sense, and Anduin was simply left struggling to grasp the wonderful abstract chaos of it all. So this sounds like the Twisting Nether, and this is such a Lovecraftian kind of like reference, the wonderful. It's so wondrous beyond mortal comprehension. And the light, he could feel it surrounding him as strong as anywhere on Azeroth, pulsing and shining through the alien creatures. So whatever these creatures are, they are basically imbued with light. That sounds like this world has been light forged, is what it sounds like to me. The sky darkened, first to an angry red that invaded the amber skies like a premonition of doom. After a few moments, the color began to shift to an ever more nauseating shade of green. Flaring comets screamed from the diseased heavens and struck the earth, sending all the poor creatures scattering in panic. The comets stood up from their craters, towering and terrible, and began to rain down death with ruthless efficiency. A rip opened in the air near the prince, and a flood of horror spilled out, winged demons and alluring succubi wielding greenish-yellow fire and powerful magic, destroying everything in their path. After the Dark Army had finished its deployment, a gigantic form walked through the rift, and it looked too much like the Draenei for the prince not to notice. The last being leveled the rock sculptures around him, clearing a space where he could kneel in the dust made from his destruction and draw symbols of dread power with his clawed finger. When it finished, there was a moment of perfect quiet as the slaughter halted and the entire world waited in horrified stillness. And then, an explosion. The unleashed energies ripped the world's surface apart, and Anduin found himself crying out and throwing his arms up in terror, but the magics moved right through him without any harm. The Legion marched back into the portal, returning to the dark nexus of the demon's dwelling, and in their wake was left nothing. Nothing alive, at any rate. Even the wondrous rock formations, Anduin would never know if they were natural or carved by the alien life he'd witnessed, were no more. There was only ash and broken matter. Even the sky was clouded, no longer allowing a clear view of the 4 moons. Then, mercifully, the vision ended. Anduin stood before the prophet again, and although he fought the impulse and was angry with himself, he wept. There is no shame in mourning such loss, Velen said. What world was it? When did this happen? The prince asked through his tears. I do not know its name. Its inhabitants did not speak in ways we understand, and none of the mortal races from this world ever walked there. I call it Fanlin Deskor, amber skies over wondrous rock. Given that I doubt the Legion records its victims, or even deigns to recall them, we are likely the only ones in the universe who know it existed at all. How sad, Anduin said. Yes, light willing, when the last victory is won, I will sit in a tower built on one of those lost worlds, and I will record them all as my penance. Penance for what? What have you done but help, Velen? I failed long ago to turn my brothers from their course, and creation has paid the price. Velen waved that line of discussion away, returning to the purpose of showing Anduin the vision. But my intent was to illustrate for you the consequences of defeat. As terrible as a cataclysm has proven, as formidable an enemy as Deathwing may be, our war is a far greater struggle. It is not just a single world we defend, but all of them. Anduin always knew his lessons were at an end when the prophet resumed his meditative posture and stared out at the energies of the seat. As the prince opened the chamber's door and began to slide out, one final pronouncement from the prophet followed him from the room. And young one, it is a terrible burden. So, the thing about this is that there's a couple things that are crazy here. One, Velen is showing a mortal boy, a mortal human, these maddening, chaotic visions from where I can only assume is the twisting nether. Wherever this planet is that Velen knows about, and the Draenei know about, because Velen literally says no one could understand anything that any inhabitants of this world ever said, Velen knows where it is. He believes that it's their job to watch over it. And the thing about this is that he also believes that because what he did in his failure, creation has suffered. But what is creation? What is it? Who bides over the forces of creation? Who controls that power? It's the Titans. I've been saying for a while that I think the Draenei have been involved with the Titans before. I don't find that to be a stretch of the imagination, similar to the Xel'Naga and the Protoss from StarCraft 2. And Velen believes that they are to watch over every world. But you learn by reading in Chronicle Volume 1 that one of the reasons Sargeras began his crusade in the first place is because he realizes that the Pantheon, not the Draenei, we're not even talking about the Draenei, but the Pantheon, it was impossible for them to watch over all worlds at the same time. It was impossible. In order to stop the void from growing like it does, they would have to look over the entire cosmos simultaneously, and Sargeras knew that that was not possible. It's not possible. It's ridiculous. It's way too much to watch over. Velen and the Draenei believe that that is their duty, to watch over all, and protect from the Legion and from the old gods, and them burning holes in the fabric of reality. But doesn't that seem to align the Draenei with the goals of the Titans? If that's what the Titans wanted, is to safeguard and watch over every world, does that not make the Draenei essentially carrying out their will? That's what they wanted to do. Strive to protect life and protect the souls and preserve the souls and not allow for death to encompass all. I mentioned before as well that there were two different options for Velen's vision, one being void, the other would be time. Chronomatic vision, something that allows you to peer through time, similar to Elisand. And I would say that Elisand is probably one of, if not the only other character that has vision similar to Velen's. And Elisand, by peering through the timelines via the Nightwell, came to find that there was no way that the Burning Legion was not going to win. But at that point, you have to ask yourself, how different is the void and time in that regard? If the void shows you all different possibilities, and through time streams you can see a bunch of different possibilities, both are maddening, you know, it kind of can make you go a little bit crazy. This happened literally with Nosdormu when he saw his own death via peering into the future as he was bestowed the gifts of Aman'Thul. You have to wonder, how different are time and void? Well, void is entropy incarnate. Void is the purest form of entropy. Entropy, energy itself twisted inward, trying to feed upon itself but unable to because there's nothing left. Time allows for entropy. As time progresses, so does the level of entropy. As time progresses, things decay. Entropy increases. And the only way to reset the entropy of a system that has pretty much maxed out on entropy is to kill it, destroy it, reset the system, rebuild it, allow for the destruction of the system for a new release and spread of the chaos, the entropy. See, entropy is basically just the measurement of chaos within a defined and controlled system, if you will, right? So, it's very interesting how closely associated time and void seem to be, especially considering that the leader of the pantheon is the god of time, the titan of time, Aman'Thul himself. So, it's very, very interesting how this all works. But I wanted to touch on this because I think that there's been, you know, this idea that Velen likely has light visions, and that's not true. It's not true at all. Velen has insanely chaotic visions, literally insanely chaotic. They're maddening. So, there's another vision that Velen has as well. Instead of the prince, an armored warrior stood before Velen, his plate, helm, and breastplate shining with the essence of the light itself. The warrior wielded a sword forged from the same material as the armor, held it aloft as he perched on an outcropping. Whether it was another world or Azeroth, Velen couldn't quite tell, and suddenly the dark sky above erupted with the combined chivalry of Azeroth's races. The Blood Elves, Orcs, Trolls, Tauren, and even the accursed undead and scheming goblins rode flying mounts of every sort and description. They were armored and armed in magical weaponry, glowing with so much power that it hurt Velen's eyes to look at them. Beside the legions of the Horde, the ancient Night Elves charged with humans, dwarves, and gnomes, whose ancestors formed the original alliance, and the shape-changing Worgen were united with them. Velen's own Draenei bolstered the army, their ranks adorned in otherworldly metals and bearing crystalline maces and swords. The Alliance and Horde were not alone. Dragons swooped in and soared in formations that made the sky resemble a giant, multicolored reptilian wing. They blanketed the horizon with their physical size and numbers, and when they roared a challenge, it shook not just the earth Velen stood on, but the universe as well. And yet, for all this, the greatest shock to Velen's senses came as he saw those that flew just beyond the army of dragons. The Naru had taken the field, so many that Velen didn't understand how creation could contain them. The power of these beings of light filled Velen's heart with hope, swept away the lonely centuries, and left him in wonder that he could ever despair, that the dark, no matter how terrible, could ever truly reign. And then a shadow fell. It was vast and empty and swallowed all light that entered it. Velen knew it would be all-consuming until, at last, it would turn and devour itself, endlessly gnawing on nothing in the great dark beyond, removing all meaning from the universe. From the most heartbreaking sonata to the most arresting sunset. It was too terrible to see, to comprehend, and yet the army headed straight for it, and the light began to fade. Standing before the prophet was only a human man-child, eyes wide and passionate, saying something unintelligible to him. The prophet turned his back on Anduin, his mind clawing toward the light, reaching for a thread of the vision he'd witnessed, trying to see a path amid the fractured possibilities. He was forcefully reminded of the weeks leading up to the cataclysm. He didn't notice when the prince left his chambers. I wanted to read this to you guys because I wanted to hear what you thought. But I also want to point out something that's very, very important that Velen says to Anduin. And that is that, again, they knew about this planet. And because of this, I believe that the Draenei had been here as well. They've been to the planet. They tried to communicate with the natural creatures there that are now emanating with light, strangely enough. And the Legion came to do what? If the Legion is going around trying to destroy the Void and trying to defeat the Void Lords, why did the Legion show up to a world that seemingly sounds like it was totally fine? Even if there were no Draenei, if there were no light-forged army there, why did the Legion come? It's simple. Because the Legion is not fighting specifically against things like the old gods all the time and the Void all the time. They're also fighting against the Pantheon. They're also fighting against the light. They're fighting against the light forging process that preserves life on planets and keeps it bound to the light, undying forever. Makes it immortal, like the light forged Draenei. But we can't have this. We can't have the immortality among creatures of the light, because it leads to eldritch horrors rising. It leads to the spread of the void. It leads to calamity. That's why death had to be reintroduced to Azeroth. And that will be the next video. So I appreciate you guys very much for watching this. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below about Velen's vision. Is this something you were aware of? Is this a revelation for you? What do you think this could mean moving forward? Do you think it's possible that if Velen starts to lose faith in the light, which seems to have been shown a little bit in Legion, could it be possible that Velen ends up doing something rather drastic or even abandoning the light completely? If that is the case, how plot armor protected is Anduin? Because I know many of you are going to mention in the description or in the comments down below that there's also a short story called The Son of the Wolf, in which you see a vision, and it is a vision from Velen, where Anduin and he are sitting on what looks to be, I presume, the Exodar or some other type of Draenei ship, and they're preparing for the final battle. The final battle where everything will come to the climax. And so people will say, well, if Anduin is in that vision, doesn't that just mean that Anduin's gonna live regardless until that point? Maybe. Maybe. Because while the light will show you certain things, the light has been wrong before. The light was wrong in Zira, light forging Illidan. She believed that that was the destiny that was meant to happen, but Illidan has a way of breaking destinies. He has a way of making them his own. With that being said, it could be possible that the light and what Velen has seen is not entirely accurate to what will actually go down. Especially given that the light itself is from somewhere that we cannot define. We don't even know where the light comes from. And that's another thing that I wanted to just quickly mention before I wrap this up. It literally says on the last page, and then the answer came from the depths of Velen's soul. The light's lessons are a boon, no matter their origin. So Velen believes that regardless of where the light visions come from, they're a boon. They must be true. They are the path to follow. That which leads you away from darkness, that which strays away from the void, is what Velen is going to follow. That which strays away from the chaos and the destruction and the death of the Legion, that is what Velen is going to keep himself from. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you didn't like the video. And subscribe for more content. If you guys don't know, I'm streaming a lot on Twitch. You guys should go and check my Twitch out. It's twitch.tv/Pyromancer. And I do have a Patreon as well if you'd like to support me here on YouTube in any sort of way. You can check that out as well. I appreciate you very much. Stay awesome, and until next time, I will see you guys later. Peace!